Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is going to be what I think is going to be a week of videos, as in Monday through Friday, all dedicated to Van Morrison. I seem to have a lot of people in my subscriber list, in the comments, that want me to talk about Van Morrison more. And going back through and seeing, what other Van Morrison videos I have, they all seem to do fairly well. So it doesn't seem like Van Morrison's somebody that gets talked about a lot in the YouTube music world. And I think it's a shame, but it's also, probably how Van would prefer it, for people not to be talking about him all the time. But Van is one of my favorite artists ever. I've done, again, 5 or 6 videos ranking some albums, doing some reviews on the albums. I got to see Van back in 2018, so he's in my list of musicians that I was able to see. And this is just somebody that I don't get tired of talking about. Now, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do today, and what I was just going to talk about is just one of my favorite Van Morrison albums, and that might end up being what this series is this week. Is just talking about some Van Morrison albums that I like. We'll see what this week brings, but I want to talk a little bit about this album, Tupelo Honey. This is one of those albums that is a good starting point, I think, for people to get into Van. Released in 1971. There's Van looking very, I don't even know, like he's not used to sitting on a fence post, nor is he used to a woman hanging on him. This is just one of those albums that kind of puts you into a place that you've never been to, but it feels comfortable. It feels like somewhere that you've been. And this is kind of when a lot of artists in the that were coming out of the 60s into the 70s were kind of doing this homespun feel on their records. At this point, the band were in the lexicon of popular artists. They were kind of coming up with their own version of roots rock music, which would end up transitioning into Americana rock. You had people like Bob Dylan that were going back to more acoustic-y kind of tunes with his albums John Wesley Harding, the country record Nashville Skyline, even Self Portrait. You had George Harrison putting out All Things Must Pass, which had a lot of folk influences to it. You had the McCartney album coming out in 1970 that also had acoustic stuff like the song Junk on there. Teddy Boy, just a lot of artists that were looking to the New York area, Woodstock, and were kind of drawing inspiration from these people. And Van was no exception. He was hanging out with the band by this point. He would obviously show up on their farewell concert, The Last Waltz, which took place in San Francisco, and was a friend with Robbie Robertson right up until Robbie Robertson passed away. Worked with him on later projects, and all that stuff. But this is an album that I would have people jump into that don't know Van. Between this and Moondance, these are probably two of the more accessible records of the early Van catalog. And again, it's a shame that so many Van Morrison albums are no longer in print. That you have to rely on looking for the old originals or reissues, because this has some great stuff. Now, musically, it's just kind of getting got this laid back feeling. He does kind of stick to something kind of Van like from Blowing Your Mind, his first record, even Moondance. He opens with the song Wild Night, which was a big hit for him. Very horn based, kind of this upbeat Stax Records almost kind of sounding tune. And just that catchy chorus, ooh wee, wild nights are calling, and then that horn section, now, 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 and then great saxophone solo. But then he jumps into this, you know, cool tune, Straight to Your Heart Like a Cannonball. It just kind of has Van, you know, riffing a little bit vocally. A beautiful song, number 3, Old Old Woodstock, which is like, you know, him being this family man going back. You know, he has a child, he's a father. You know, he keeps saying, you know, going back to old old Woodstock, feel the cold night breeze. Going back to old old Woodstock, give my child a squeeze. Just, you know, really like homespun kind of stuff. Um, Jumping ahead, he ends side 1 with this song, kind of this ballad, "You're My Woman," which is again almost kind of like a, you know, an R&B kind of slow burner of a song. But then he jumps into side 2, "Tupelo Honey." It became a staple in the Van Morrison, you know, catalog. He performed it live. It's on every greatest hits, you know, Van Morrison compilation that you can find. Just with that, you know, build up. You know, it's 6 minutes or so, but it does not feel like it. And it's one of those songs too that he's freely admitted is one that he has plagiarized himself on. You hear that song, you hear the song "Crazy Love" from Moondance, just, you know, a year or two prior, and then you hear the song um, "Why Must I Always Explain" off of "Hymns to the Silence." Listen to those 3 songs, and you can throw in the lyrics to, you know, any of those melodies, and he does a lot. I've heard him do "Tupelo Honey" into "Why Must I Always Explain" before, and then he's done mixtures of the others as well. Just a fantastic song. "I Wanna Rue You" is just this kind of fun little song. Um, Again, classic Van. Kind of throwing this, he has it subtitled "Scottish Derivative," hitting this, you know, "I wanna rue you, wanna get through to you." Just another great tune. Um, "When the Evening Sun Goes Down," again, another kind of Van Morrison, almost like a part 2 kind of to "Wild Night" feeling, um, with a feel to it. And then it closes with the epic song "Moonshine Whiskey," which is like in this weird time signature. It jumps around almost like 2 different songs. Um, it's got this, you know, great little guitar, and just horns are like, you know, it's kind of like the slow start, and then this guitar kicks in, you know, bowing and then he jumps in, "Oh, she give me moonshine whiskey." It's just, it's so good. Um, he does a great version of it on "It's Too Late to Stop," the live record that he would put out later in the 70s. But again, this is a fantastic record. If you don't know this, look for it in your record store. I also have it on CD somewhere. And yeah, this was a $10 record. It sounds great, and you can find it wherever you are. But I highly recommend this album. If you're new to Van, um, check it out. Again, it's got mixes of that classic Van R&B, but it's got a lot of that, you know, kind of rootsy sound to it that, you know, everybody was kind of soaking in at this time. So that's just a quick little, you know, intro to what I think is going to be, you know, Van Week here on the channel. So let me know what you think. Let me know if this is a stupid idea. I'm sorry to my friend Ben Rankins down there in Australia, who is not a Van fan. I guess he doesn't have to watch my channel this week. But anyway, hope you all are doing well. Please comment. Thank you for everybody that's been watching the last few videos. I appreciate you. And in the meantime, y'all be good. Take care. We will see you on the next one. Bye now.